The Elves and the Shoemaker. There was once a shoemaker who had become so poor through no fault of his own that he had hardly any leather left, only enough to make one pair of shoes, in fact. He cut them out in the evening, intending to start work on them in the morning, and then went to bed. He had a clear conscience, so he said his prayers and then slept peacefully. Next morning he woke up, had a bite of dry bread, sat down at his bench, only to find the shoes completed already. He was astonished. He picked them up and looked at them closely from all angles. Every stitch was neat and tight, nothing was out of place. He couldn't have done better himself. A customer soon came in, looking for shoes of just that size, and liked them so much he bought them at once for a good price. That gave the shoemaker enough money to buy leather for 2 more pairs of shoes. So he did that, and as before he cut them out in the evening, meaning to carry on in the morning in good heart. But he had no need to. When he got up, the shoes were already made, just as before, stitched as if by a master craftsman. He soon found customers for them too, and that left him enough profit to buy leather for 4 pairs. And the next morning they were finished, and he sold them, and so it went on. Each evening he cut the shoes out. Next morning they were finished, so that pretty soon he was making a good income, and not much later he was a wealthy man. One evening, not long before Christmas, he cut out a number of shoes as usual, and then said to his wife, just as they were going to bed, "Why don't we stay up a bit tonight and see if we can find out who's been helping us?" His wife thought that was a good idea, and they lit the lamp and hid behind a rail of clothes hanging up in the corner of the workroom. At midnight, 2 little naked men squeezed in under the door and jumped up to the workbench, where they set to work at once, sewing together the cut-out shoes at a speed the shoemaker could hardly believe. They worked until they'd finished every one, and then they put the shoes on the bench and went out under the door. In the morning, the shoemaker's wife said, "I think we should do something in return for those 2 little men. After all, they've made us rich, and there they are, running about in the cold with nothing on. I'm going to sew them some shirts and jackets, and some underwear and trousers, and knit a pair of stockings for each of them as well. And you can make them each a little pair of shoes." "That's a good idea," said the shoemaker, and they set to work. That evening they set the clothes out on the bench instead of the cut-out shoes, and hid again to see what the little men would do. At midnight they came in and leaped up to the bench as before, intending to start work, and then they stopped, looking at the clothes and scratching their heads in puzzlement. Then they realized what they were for, and jumped for joy, put them on at once and preened themselves, singing, "We're finer than we were before, we shan't be cobblers any more." They leaped about like a pair of kittens, on the chairs, the bench, the hearth, the windowsill, and finally they darted under the door and were gone. They never came back. But the shoemaker prospered. All his work went well from then on, and he and his wife lived happy and wealthy until the end of their days. The end.